Beer, rum, and rock and roll. Saving rock, one conversation at a time.
Welcome back to another Beer, Rum, and Rock and Roll podcast, the first one of 2023. And I can't think of a better way to start off the new year than having this guy on. My guest today is the powerful and attractive Todd Dammit Kerns.
Powerful and attractive. I like that you're Eddie Van Halen. I got an Eddie Van Halen right here. So, yeah.
I did. That's a bit of a Gene Simmons intro, as you might have noticed.
I know. I noticed that. Yeah. You're a powerful and attractive man.
When I met him once, I wanted him to say that to me, and he wouldn't do it.
You are neither powerful nor attractive.
That's exactly what he said. I'm like, oh.
Zing.
Daggers, right?
Let's be honest. He has said that to people who are not powerful and attractive. So why is he?
He was picking on me.
He's picking on you. Exactly. Yeah.
So, dude, it's been it's been a year since you've been on. So welcome back.
Has it been that long? Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to be back.
Hey, is it too late to say Happy New Year? I don't want to piss off Larry David, you know.
Yeah. I've been doing it. I don't care. I go around, hey, happy 2023 is what I've been saying, because I'm kind of like, this far into it. It's sort of like I haven't seen you since the New Year turned. So, yeah, I think happy 2023 is perfectly acceptable. Yeah,
absolutely. So how was your holiday break, man? I'm assuming you went to Vancouver to see the fam and all that. Is that how that went?
It was great. It was bizarre. As you know, the weather was super crazy. So we went to my wife's family back east, and then we went across, and of course there had been sort of rumbling of bad weather coming, but I was sort of like, well, bad weather's bad weather. We deal with bad weather all the time, So by the time we got to Vancouver, the intention was to make our way to Kelowna, where my parents are. But by the time we got to Vancouver, it was just like, that was just not going to happen. Like, it was just, we showed up in Winnipeg, basically. Somehow Vancouver had transformed into Winnipeg. And we're like, right. What the hell? The hell's going on here? So, and of course, the city's not in any way prepared for that level of snow or anything. So
no.
Luckily, my kids are in Vancouver, so we just sort of hung there and then made our way back. Because then it becomes a concern of like, well, I got to get back for Bruce Kulick New Year's gig, so I can't now it's not just a concern of getting to my parents' house. Now it's a concern of getting back to Vegas in time for the 27th we started rehearsals. So
yeah, I hate to rub it in, Todd, but my holiday break was in Puerto Vallarta.
There you go. That was a clever choice. That was was the smartest. As long as you can get there, because the travel was all jacked up with Southwest and everything. So yeah, but as long as you got there and everything was cool, then you're cool. Yeah.
Yeah, we were WestJet, so it was all good.
Perfect. Yeah.
Andrew's looking at her phone, and there's just a shit show going on. Not that far from where we were, actually. It's far, but not that far. I'm like, can we just ignore the news while we're here?
Exactly. That's what you're supposed to do that in Puerto Vallarta.
That's right. Yeah, it was the whole family, man. 15 of us.
That's awesome. That's so cool.
Blair and his family and my sister, Blair, obviously.
Yeah, of course.
And my sister and her crew and my parents. So they're not getting any younger. Cool. So it was cool that we're all together. Yeah.
I'm glad. Yeah. That's the one thing that, with me getting to see my family, we got to see my wife's family, and then not getting to see mine was sort of like, what are you going to do? You try not to put too much significance on, like, can't we just get together in like June when it's like not dealing with, weather issues? Can't we just get in August or, something like that? I mean, the worst part about it was my brothers were both there with their families and my parents and all that. So, but, it is what it is. It's like there had been accidents on the highway out to Kelowna. And I was like, well, thankfully I didn't get that sort of wild idea. We're going to rent a car. No, dude, if it's bad to fly in, then I'm not driving it.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, are you like I called the holiday, I jokingly call the eat, drink, and lie around tour, right? Because that's all it is. And after a couple of days, I'm like, okay, is this it? Like, now what?
100%. Yeah, you just kind of like, I was already over it by the time we left Hamilton. Like, we were back east. My mother-in-law just said spoils us, and then by the time I get back, back west, I was like, okay, I'm done. Can we get back to reality now?
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm one of those people that sort of wakes up with something to do every day. Today I talked to Randy.
Hey, right on. Doesn't get any better than that.
That's the best day ever.
Okay, dude, I have to do this even though it's a downer. I'm wearing this shirt for a reason.
I see that.
We must talk about the passing away of Mr. Jeff Beck Tuesday, January 10th, of bacterial meningitis. How did that hit you, man? Because it hit me really fucking hard.
It's so funny how you're not prepared for this kind of stuff. I mean, even though every time someone passes, from Bowie to, especially when they're like legacy artists, you kind of have this, I kind of tell myself, man, it's like the next 10 years are going to be brutal, with Jagger, Richards, McCartney, Starr, like it's just not going to last forever. So it is what it is. But yeah, it hit me really hard, because I'm one of those guys that I grew up on punk rock and Ace Frehley and all that kind of stuff. That was my kind of guitar playing. I love Rick Nielsen. I love Ace Frehley. I like kind of like cool solos. But I always had a great appreciation for guys who could throw down. Obviously EVH, Randy Rhoads, those kind of guys, we just love them, But I never was really hugely into guys who could, like, sort of progressive jazz rock kind of stuff, where Jeff definitely dipped his toe into a lot, But I've always said that Jeff is the greatest guitar player, was the greatest guitar player of all time. I just felt like Jimmy Page, Eric Clapton, those guys he came up with, they did what they did, and they sort of like they arrived at their sort of like what they're going to do a long time ago. And that's not a diss on Clapton or Page. I think that what they do is brilliant. But Beck just kept growing. I mean, like, when I watched that Ronnie Scott's concert, I was just like, what is happening? Like, I was kind of like, I think I play guitar. I was like, I don't understand what's like his precision with, with the volume knob and the whammy bar all the time. And then he takes his slide off his finger and he starts playing it like, and I'm like, what's going on? Like, who is this guy? It's like, he's the kind of guy that, he sort of plays guitar all the time, and he's always probably tinkering with amps and doing weird stuff and just creating and coming up with new things that none of us ever think about. Right. And that's where I kind of said to myself, I go, this guy is the greatest. He was the greatest living guitar player I've ever seen. Like, and I'm saying that like as a person who's sort of, like, I will say once in a while I'll see a guy like Derek Trucks, and I watched him playing slide guitar, and I was like, I've never heard precision like this. It blew my mind. Like I was just blown away by like that kind of stuff. And I say that as a guy who's like, I'm just not impressed by, look how fast I can play, whittly. Right. I'm sort of like, that's cool. But when I there's something about specific players who play that you just sort of feel it, and Jeff was that guy 100%.
Yes, I agree. And to quote Rick Beato, excuse me, he's uncopyable. Like, you can copy Clapton and Page all day long. Yeah. You can't do what Jeff Beck does.
Not at all. He's like a 6th-degree ninja black belt of, it's like that's not something everybody just does on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
It's something else entirely. And I think that that's what Jeff's legacy will always be. The only saving grace is the fact that the music makes them all immortal. I mean, it's the only real kind of the beautiful thing about, a guy like Jeff. We can miss him and just go put on a record, and he's one of those guys that you go, well, who is Jeff Beck? There's so many different chapters of Jeff Beck all the way back to the Yardbirds and forward. You're like, there's that Jeff Beck, and then there's the 70s Jeff Beck, and then 80s Jeff Beck. Like, I was the one that the other day somebody asked me, well, hey, what, call out a Jeff Beck song. And I go, Infatuation, Rod Stewart. And I go,
wow, good one.
And everybody's like, I go, no, dude, his guitar playing on that song is sick.
Yeah.
And they all go, okay. And then they play and they go, oh, good call. Because at first everybody's like, that 80s Rod Stewart song? Yeah, dude, that song, he shreds on that. And it's true. He does. He's like, that's always been such an interesting relationship. The Rod and Jeff relationship is such an interesting thing. But, it's like, I'm a fan. I'm a fan of, as you know, I just love rock and roll, and I love
totally
Jeff's place and all that.
Jeff and Rod, that's a love-hate for sure. Like, I remember in the 80s around Infatuation, they were touring together.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
they're supposed to.
It lasted 3 shows. Calgary was one of them. Blair and I were there. And after that show, he quit. That was it.
Wow.
Calgary was the last one. I remember, the only thing I really remember that's burned in, he was wearing pink Converse Chucks. I remember that.
I think he played a pink Jackson V or Jackson guitar back then. Yeah, it was like kind of his thing. Yeah. No, I mean, it was sort of a legendary thing. And I think Jeff just had a moment where he's like, Rod Stewart was the singer of the Jeff Beck group, and I don't think I want to be the guitar player of the Rod Stewart group, or whatever you want to.
Exactly.
It's just an interesting dichotomy.
Another quote I heard, I thought was cool is even if he's not your favorite guitar player, and he's mine as well, he's your favorite guitar player's favorite guitar player.
100%.
That's it, right? I mean, come on.
Yeah, all those guys, EVH, all those guys, they looked up to Jeff. He was the guy.
Yeah.
And he was, like I say, he was constantly growing to the end. I'm sure I never saw, I haven't, I would have to kind of pay attention to what some of the videos are of the more recent stuff he was doing. But I'm sure he was, even then, probably advanced beyond where he was 5 years ago.
That's what I found really sad was his abilities were not diminished at all. Like the last video I saw, I think it's a couple months ago, he's just killing it.
Totally.
And it seemed like this was a fluke. Like he was healthy. He's a vegetarian, never really did drugs or drank or any of that shit. And he catches this fucking thing and done. Like it just seemed he had some time left, Like
that's the weird thing about being a human being is it's like how resilient we are. I mean, like the shit we can go through, and then somebody will slip in the shower and die, or it's the craziest thing. You're like, what?
Totally, right?
It's fascinating. But I mean, it's been quite a ride too with Lisa Marie and then Robbie Bachman and then Robbie Knievel. It was like, whoa! Like every day I was waking up and people would give me a hard time because on my phone I have these alerts that just pop up and they go like, oh shit, no way! I saw it post something, and then people are like, they give me a hard time like I'm the harbinger of death. A comment, I'm just posting. I'm like, dude, I'm a fan, and I'm sort of passing on my respect. They all hear about it through me somehow,
Well, my final thought on this is, and I've always felt this way, that it's a bit strange, even to me, to get super emotional about somebody passing away that you don't know, right?
Yeah.
But then I pondered it. I'm just like, well, it's the art they create means that much to you.
Of course.
That when they leave this world, it hits you, man. It just does. Because I had my phone was blowing up too, and people are like, "Oh, I'm sorry to hear about Jeff Beck. I know he was your guy." Blah blah blah. I'm like, well, my brother didn't die. Like it felt, it felt like a wake for me, and I'm like, hey, I'm just a fan of his music. It just felt a little strange that way, but I get it.
I don't feel bad about, or not bad, but I don't feel silly about right. Prince dying or Bowie dying. Those were big deals to me. It was kind of like, wow, it just felt like something you never really considered. The end of that line with the output of music that these people make and their effect on your life is substantial. I don't think it's, it's true of all these different sort of, whether it's an actor or an artist or whatever. It's like the stuff that you've always admired about them and now they're gone it's sad. It's we're supposed to be sad about that. It'd be weird if we're not.
I agree.
Sociopath 100%. Behavior if we're not. Yeah.
Right. Okay, let's move on to happier topics, man. Let's go back a couple months. I want to talk about the Kiss Cruise or Kiss Cruises. There was 2 back to back, right?
That's right. There was, yeah.
Like Kiss Cruise 11. I think you've been on pretty much all of them, have you not?
No, I came on in 2017. So I think it was Kiss Cruise. I don't even know. I lost track. But we've been on 5 or 6 of them, I think is the number, yeah.
Now, is it still a blast for you, man? Like, is it still as much fun as the first time? Like, tell me what your highlights were. How was it?
Yeah, I mean, like you, the whole thing is a gigantic Star Trek convention for Kiss fans. It's like right. You're there with the like-minded people, and the thing that we do with Bruce Kulick is such a specific deep dive. It's kind of, when I initially did it we did it with Bruce and Bob Kulick, as you remember, before Bob passed, and it was that was a very specific deep dive too, because we're doing a lot of Paul Stanley solo album stuff, Killers, stuff like that Bob had played on, and it was so interesting to be able to do that kind of stuff. And I was saying the other day, I was we're doing it and we're playing, and I'm like so focused on, like, you're trying to think, what are the words to this song, and okay, and the second verse, okay, and then there's the breakdown. You're just kind of going through not the motions is the wrong word for it, but you're playing the show. I'm a surgeon. I have to scalpel. It's like you're kind of trying to do the, I wouldn't put that much importance on it, but that's kind of what you're kind of doing your job, and you're seeing people reacting and having a great time. And I remember walking off, and I walk over to the side of the stage, and I'm standing with my wife, and I go, I think that went pretty well. And she goes, are you going to go talk to those people? And I go, who? And I turn around, there's this wall of people just like, oh my God, right, like grown men weeping, like I never thought I would hear that song live. And I go, oh, well, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. And then we just realized the more often we did it, that it was just like, there's no such thing as digging too deep. We did Time Traveler, like unreleased demos and Sword in the Stone and, all that kind of stuff. You're just kind of like, I mean, I love doing that kind of stuff, but every once in a while I go, have we gone too far? And it's like, no, there's no such thing.
You
It's
can't.
like,
You can't. No.
It's like, digging into the solo albums, any of that kind of stuff is like, no, you can't go too far. People, they just love it. They're fans. They didn't come there to hear rock and roll all night and shout it out loud. They're here to hear something deep.
Totally, man. But the highlight for me wasn't even musical. When I was looking on YouTube, it was you playing that Rick Emmett fucking Dean White V, dude. Like, honestly, I just like, holy shit, if you're Canadian, you know what that is.
I know. Yeah, that's the beauty. I had to, as I was getting ready for the cruise, I go, it'd be cool for this. Cause I always like that kind of like, watching the kind of like around the Elder and Creatures kind of era. He was playing some kind of white custom V. And I go, and I remember looking over in the living room and going, I think Rick's going to come out. Rick's coming out of retirement. He's going to go play.
So you had that guitar. You had it already.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
I got it a long time ago. Yeah, it was Dean's been really good to me. Oddly enough, Vinnie Paul, I wish I had it in here, but he got me a Dean Cadillac and a couple things back then. But I picked up the Rick Emmett. It's such a beauty. It's a great sounding guitar too. I mean, and the weird thing was a bunch of them were in storage, and in Vegas the weather is so dry here that it has this effect of like really messing with the frets. How the frets will kind of like really act up, and the wood contracts. But to Dean's credit, I'm not a Dean artist or anything like that, but I will say I pulled those things out of storage and they play great. I was like, well, whatever they're doing good work over there. It's a sort of a weird thing whenever we're getting ready to do those things. I'm like, well, which guitar should I play? I often play my own signature, which I had two of them there as well, but it just felt like, the Flying V. That's a great Kiss guitar.
It's badass, yeah. Back to music, The Oath struck me as something that had you played that one before?
Oddly enough, it was Bruce who brought it up. He said he went to Kiss mini golf for some kind of thing that they go there for events of some sort. And he goes, and I heard that song and I thought, we have to play this song. We just kind of heard it over the thing. And I go, because that sounds like something that I would throw, like, we got to do The Oath. Like we talked him into doing Exciter from Lick It Up and stuff like that. Stuff that usually he's kind of like, well, I wasn't really involved in that song. He's kind of like, why would I play that? I go, trust me, people are going to go bananas if we open with Exciter, which was bananas. I was like,
yeah.
So he's become a lot more kind of not that he was resistant, but more kind of like open to like. So when he came with The Oath, I go, dude, I know it right now. Let's go. Like I'm good to go.
Easy for him to say. The vocal on that one's a fucking bitch.
I know. This is my current reading. Is the
the
making of the Elder. Odyssey is the name of the book.
I do not have that.
Which is really expansive. It's like,
wow.
It's like the Bible. I'm like, okay, wow. It's a lot of information for a record that didn't sell very well.
Right, yeah.
Stuff. But I love that record. Me and Christian Martucci from Stone Sour and Corey Taylor's band and Zach Throne. I'm like, dude, I want to do the entire album in its entirety.
In order.
And those guys are the kind of lunatics that go like, totally. Let's do that.
That would be awesome. Yeah.
Because things that often start as a joke sometimes end up happening down at Vamped. Come on by. We're going to play The Elder in its entirety. And you probably have all my lunatic friends from the Kiss Cruise would all show up too. Yeah.
Hey, just to give your buddy Zach Throne a shout out, Fits Like a Glove, I thought was awesome, man. And those lyrics are just fucking hilarious. Like, that song is awesome.
Yeah, it's one of the all-time greats. It's like, I don't know about you, but the Kiss Animalized Live Uncensored was a huge deal for me. Like to the point where the VHS was like kind of all warbly, just played the shit out of that thing, I still love that show and those versions of that song in a lot of ways. That's like, in learning it, I kept sort of, as we were learning Fits Like a Glove, I kept force feeding him like, go back and watch the live uncensored version where he does this and he does that,
We're not playing it fast enough. Faster.
Yeah, Bruce kept going like, slow down. Because he has to play those solos, which are like, at his peak performance, but yeah, no, I love all that stuff. I've been pushing for stuff like Not for the Innocent, stuff
that's
like that.
Good one.
That's, where you really start swinging from the fences, but we'll see. I mean, all of our activity has come to a close as of, New Year's. So now it's like, I don't know when the next Bruce thing will happen.
Now, a clip I saw was Paul Stanley watching you guys. Did you know he was watching, or did you know after? How did that go down?
After, yeah, no, I wasn't really aware of that. It was like Paul was
Right.
oddly just around, like he just sort of like was watching almost every band. We were just standing watching Doc, and Paul comes over and he's standing there, and I go, you know what? The very first time I saw you guys, these guys were opening for you. And he goes, huh, like whatever. So to him, it's like I hear this stuff every single day.
Right.
The impact I've had on your life, blah 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 blah. But it was just kind of like I just thought it was such an interesting moment to be like, yeah, it's interesting because George was on stage with Doc and at that moment, so I was kind of like, I remember specifically standing in Regina watching Doc and seeing Gene off on stage, right, like kind of in a long black leather coat, just standing with his arms crossed, watching Doc, and people around us were going, Gene, 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 between songs. And
that's a wild full circle moment, man. Now, had you played with Lita Ford before? Because that was kind of cool. Eh?
There was an award show thing here once in Vegas. She came out and jammed something. I probably, Cherry Bomb or something like that. I was just in the backing band. It was mostly like the Sinners guys. And that was like one of the first things I did after my eye surgery, like in 2010. So yeah, it was a cool night. There, actually, you could see a quick clip of that in the Quiet Riot documentary. There's a thing where that night they did a tribute to Kevin DuBrow, and Glenn Hughes sang Metal Health, and I was just playing guitar. Wow. It was kind of like, does anybody know how to play Metal Health? I go, kinda. Get in the ring, kid. Okay.
Right on. Trial by fire, yeah.
Yeah, it was very much a trial by fire. But we had it was cool to play with Leah, and that was just brief, like super brief.
Right.
And then I'm a massive Runaways fan. Like the thing about the Runaways, like as a kid, I didn't really think about this until Pat Smear brought it up on a thing he was talking about. He goes, on the back of the record, it said their ages, which is probably a creepy, like, jailbait thing or something.
Absolutely.
But as a kid, it was kind of more like, these girls are like, I was probably 10, 11 years old or something like that. And I'm looking and I go, these girls are not much older than I am. And they're making records. I mean, it was kind of like one of those sort of gateway kind of like, you could see the destination, you know what I mean? And Leah was, this thing we just did with her was awesome. I just talked to her one of her crew people lives here in Vegas. I just saw her the other night. We were talking about it. And she goes, she loved you guys. I go, oh, thank God. Because I was never quite sure. You're never quite sure because it was like, it's one of those things you agree to 6 months from now. Like, come play on the cruise. It's going to be, Brent Woods from Sebastian's band and then 2 guys from Slash's band or whatever. And she's probably like, okay, yeah, sounds like fun. And then as you get closer, you're like, wait a second, who are these guys? Do they know the show? Because we all agree to these things kind of like, in the future. And then as you get closer, you're like, well, wait a second, do they know the set? So then she shows up and there's no real rehearsal. It's just kind of like we get into a cabin, like a room together, go through some of the arrangements. Because a lot of these people like Lita, it's kind of like, well, we don't really play it like the record. We've been playing it like this for 20 years. Can we do this? And I'm like, I'm the guy that always goes to the YouTube clips and goes, okay, so she's played it like this, like 2-3 months ago. So this is probably more like, because live arrangements always sort of metamorphosize into something a little different. So
sure. But
it was great. It was really, she's great, awesome person, and did a great job.
Fitz is heading out with her for a few gigs I saw.
Yeah, he's filling in for Bobby Rock. Yeah.
Ah, yes.
Who was also in the Vinnie Vincent Invasion.
Whoa.
If you want to come full circle back to the Kiss stuff, yeah.
Now, you mentioned
and
Sebastian.
Nelson.
Wow, yes, that's right. You mentioned Sebastian. The last clip I want to talk about is when he got on stage there and kind of made up with Michael Sweet, that whole controversy or whatever.
Of which I was completely ignorant. I'm like, what's going on? Michael? Because I know both those guys as friends. I'm like, what's happening? I didn't know anything about this.
I just enjoyed it because it was barely staying on the rails, man. It was like, oh, man.
Yeah, I don't even think it was in the vicinity of the rails. Oh, Sebastian's man. Like, let's do God Gave Rock and Roll to You. And Brent Woods is like, I don't know that song. He goes, well, Todd, do you know it? I go, of course I know it. But I mean, like, what do you want me to do? Just play the guitar by itself. And I go, okay. Because even Michael mentions to me, he goes, I don't know how to play that song. Oh, and I go, man. I don't know. It's what he saw. So I just kind of playing it, and Sebastian was singing it. And then, Sebastian's one of those guys, when he gets he's a dog with a bone. He's kind of like, I want to do this. I just saw him the other night. He's just always a character.
Okay, before we leave the Kiss thing, let's just touch on this Bruce Kulick New Year's Eve extravaganza in Vegas there. How was that? It was like a 2-day acoustic, dinners, and a roast and all this shit. How fun was that?
It was hilarious. It was like, like it's this full event that they sort of coordinated, of which, my involvement was sort of like, hey, are you available for these 2 days to play some music? Yeah, okay.
Sure.
It's like, I don't really have anything to do with, because people are like, wow, they're charging a lot for this. And I go, they are? I don't really even know. But it was like a 2 day event. They went to mini golf. They did a bunch of stuff. I was there we did the first night was an acoustic show, a dinner and an acoustic show. And it was really fun and real loose and real campfire kind of hang. And then the next day we did a full electric show and a roast with some comedians. Don Jameson was there from that metal show and all that kind of stuff. So it was fun. It's always fun to play. I don't think we did anything really radically different. I don't think we added anything new to the show. We usually kind of add stuff because it's so funny. Like now that, that I've lived in that world with Bruce, how many people kind of found Kiss at that specific moment. Like people will be like, we were children when Kiss was in makeup, but when everybody sort of got into heavy metal, Kiss was also one of those heavy metal bands. They were just kind of like, they were just a regular rock band with no makeup on, but they were Kiss, And I think I was borderline that because we were children and really into makeup Kiss. And then just sort of once we transitioned into being old enough to go to concerts and that kind of stuff, Kiss was a different animal. But like Chris Jericho, tons of my friends, it's like their Kiss is like lick it up forward. You know what I mean? And
It's hard to believe.
yeah, they love makeup Kiss, but it's kind of like that was the Kiss they discovered and fell in love with. Yeah.
Right. I get it. Okay, man. Speaking of new music, let's talk about your latest project, Heroes and Monsters. Self-titled debut comes out January 20th. So you got Steph Burns on guitar, Will Hunt on drums, and you on bass and vocals, of course. Now, I love a power trio, man. Where Rush, ZZ Top, Motorhead, Winery Dogs is fantastic.
Yeah.
There's just something really cool about it, man. I love it.
Me too. I mean, I've been thinking about this a lot because, of course, it was very obvious, but I didn't really spend a lot of time thinking about it because I played my first real band was sort of we first kind of like left our little town and went out and started doing shows. It was a 3-piece, me on bass and singing. And there's something freeing about it. There's something limiting about it as well. But there's, like bands like King's X, there's so many great, The Police, I mean, to Rush's credit, the genius of kind of going, well, it's 3 hotel rooms, it's 3 flights.
That's right.
It's, 3 per diems, you split the money 3 ways. You're like, wow, these guys are geniuses,
You don't have to share the groupies as much,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, it depends what you're into, I guess. Yeah. But no, the whole idea of it was kind of like, for this, it sort of started as when Will first approached me about it. I think there was probably in his mind, he was thinking, well, it would be good to kind of round out this idea that he and Steph were kind of knocking around. But what if we got a guy that could do both jobs? Instead of going looking for a bass player and then looking for a singer, why don't we just see if we can find somebody who could do both of those things? And it was it basically started like that. Me sitting in this room going like, okay, well, send the files over. And the first song was a song called Locked and Loaded. We released it as the first single and a lyric video. And that literally sounds pretty much the way it kind of came together. Like it was just sort of like they had been working on some music and I just sort of screamed on it, pressed record, and away it went. A completely remotely done record where Steph is in Milan, Italy, and Will is in Florida, and I'm in Nevada. So it was sort of like, I don't really think it sounds that way. Like I am pretty, I get objective enough to kind of go like, I wanted to make sure it sounds like a real, like we're actually playing together. And I think that it does. I think we did a good enough job of just kind of really finding that sort of way to make it feel like it was a real band. Because Frontiers is so good at assembling bands. It's like my friends play Blas Elias and those guys, they play in these sort of like supergroup ideas where they'll take guys from different things and make a record. And then there's never really an intention of touring it. It's just like put out some music and see what happens. and that's cool. But this was not that at all. We were just kind of like three guys who, probably a year into the pandemic, and just sort of like no one's really doing anything. And I'm doing Toque and my own sort of chat like this kind of thing. And that was sort of the focus. And then Toque, we were working on a lot of material as well. But then, guys like Will just reach out, and I'm like, dude, I'm not doing anything. As far as I know, a lot of people were sort of like, we're never going to tour again. It's over. And I'm kind of like, well, I guess we'll just write and record. And that's what I did, without knowing what 2022 or 2023 would look like. And now that I know, it's like, oh, okay, well, had I sort of been able to foresee that, I may not have got myself into 1,000 different projects, but it's a good problem to have when, like when a record like Heroes and Monsters comes out, and you feel like, to me, it's all this weird legacy idea of like one day I'm going to be 75, 80 years old and not really doing this anymore. And I'm going to look back and go, that's awesome that I got a chance to do that,
Hey, you know what? As big as a music geek as I am, I'm kind of embarrassed, but I wasn't familiar with these two cats you're playing with. So give me a little bio on these guys. Who are these dudes?
Well, Steph has done a lot of cool stuff because he played in Alice Cooper, and that's always one of
Right.
those ones that gets an immediate reaction from guys like me is his ability to have been. He was on like Last Temptation of Alice and stuff like
Okay.
that. So, but he played with YNT. He was from
Right.
the Bay Area.
Yep.
He was even in Huey Lewis and the News, which is the
No
big one
way.
for me. I'm like, what? You did Huey and Lewis and the News? That's so cool. Steph now, for the last, I don't know how long, a long time, he plays with an artist from Italy called Vasco Rossi,
Right.
who's like, they call him the Bruce Springsteen of Italy, which Sebastian Bach will tell you, the Bruce Springsteen of Italy is Bruce Springsteen.
That's right. That's right.
But he's this massive Italian artist who does soccer stadiums, and Steph has been his guitar player for a long time. So that thing took off so much that he moved to Milan. He kind of completely changed his life and has this whole other existence over there. So very interesting, very talented, very exciting to be playing with him. And then with Will has been in Evanescence for quite a while now, but he had played with Black Label, a bunch of, Vince Neil, like Tommy Lee he played with, which is weird. There's a solo run where Tommy wasn't playing drums. People forget about this. And then he sort of has been in Evanescence. And that's how we know each other, just from doing the festival runs and just having different people in the business that we associate with that are mutual friends. Yeah, so that connection came with, when he reached out to me about like, doing this. It was through Will.
Man, all you guys are badass players. Like this is a good, this is a great sounding album. It's a great album. I know people are gonna be like, oh, Randy and Todd are friends. Of course he's going to say that. Fuck that. Like I'm not blowing smoke. It's really, really strong, man. It's really fucking good.
Yeah. I honestly feel really good about it. It's really hard to know when you're in the middle of it, when you're really subjective to it, So, enough time has passed now that I'm talking about it. I go, you know what? I feel really good about this. There's some pretty wild things that I wouldn't normally do, but I think that's kind of part of the fun of getting involved in something, like that. Heroes and Monsters would never have happened if there wasn't a pandemic. So to me, it's kind of like, well, let's try and do some things that are different, some things that are out of my wheelhouse, some things that are out of my sort of quote unquote comfort zone. And I feel really good about that, and it's been weird for me now because I'm suddenly like really enjoying playing bass and all that kind of stuff, and really kind of falling in love with the whole process again, because it's different and challenging. And I'm one of those people, as much as I complain about like, it's kind of like, it's like having to get ready for a fight or something. You got to start training, but it's like, but it feels good to be doing something challenging. I think it's important,
Absolutely, man. Are you writing all the lyrics, Todd?
No, a lot of it was sort of, certain songs it's me, and then other ones it's kind of like quite communal, and some of the music had been sort of started before I ever came along. So
right.
There's a couple songs like Raw Power and I Knew You Were the Devil are actually like from Will Hunt's Dark New Days run, and those songs were so strong. I was like, I would love to do a version of this. Raw Power was my intention, and then it's sort of me kind of like waving that flag. And it just, the songs were just like very obviously there and aggressive and rock and all that kind of stuff. So I was game. I'm one of those guys, like, as a vocalist, you have to keep in mind that guys like Freddie Mercury, you know, he was singing John Deacon or Brian May's lyrics sometimes. You know, it's like we always think that, okay, well, he's, you know, Bohemian Rhapsody and his songs, but Tie Your Mother Down or Another One Bites the Dust, those aren't his lyrics. So I think it's an interesting thing to do once in a while, to take it as an actor. Here's your script. Now make this believable, make it interesting. So I'm not opposed to that kind of stuff on occasion. You know, it's sort of like, I love being able to write and express, you know, my stuff. But you know, when stuff like that happens, especially in this context where it's collaborative, and, you know, in a collaborative situation where you have to collaborate, you know, you really have to kind of find something fun to kind of hang your hat on.
You know what I dig too, man, is there's 10 tracks. Old school.
I know.
Like, I find these new albums
Van Halen 2 or something.
Right? They're too fucking long. Because Red Hot Chili Peppers coming to mind. Last year, they released 2 17-song albums, and half of me's like, hey, I love the Chili Peppers, more. But the other half's like, it's too much. It's just too much.
I remember back in the CD days, when that sort of the novelty of like, damn, we can fit a lot of material on this. Because we did 17 songs on World on Fire. I mean, to our audience's credit, they seemed to dig deep. But what I found with, like, The Fragile by Nine Inch Nails, or one of those records, you know, Infinite Sadness, Smashing Pumpkins, or any of those kind of like longer records, I would find that, like, as much of a fan of the record that I felt like I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to that last quarter, you know, or that last, you'd be like, I don't even know what's going on back there. It's like, you know, by the time I get halfway through this record, I've arrived at my destination, or, you know, or whatever. You're kind of, and then you go back to the start. It's even with the last Slash record, we did 10 songs. The sort of new thing is like, dude, remember like Van Halen 1 and like Rock and Roll Over and Led Zeppelin records, where it was just like, you know, I mean, we're talking like some of those albums have like 8 songs.
8,
like,
that's right.
Like not even 40 minutes worth of music. And it's like, how can you lose when the record is that strong and that short, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, we're dealing with an attention span deficiency in this current state of things. And I think that, you know, I'd be asking people to even listen to the first 10 seconds of your song, let alone 10 songs, is, you know, it's getting harder and harder. But I think that there's still enough of us out there who love the idea of a collection of 10, 12 songs, whatever it is, a piece of artwork on the front, and that's a record. You know, I mean, in the meantime, even in Toque, we discuss all the time. I mean, we release singles and kind of go, well, do we compile this into a recording, like a record and a CD? And there's a lot of discussion about that it's hard to imagine we'd be having that discussion if you thought about it 10, 20 years ago. You'd be like, no, we compile songs, we put a cover on it, we put the lyrics in there, and we sell it. Within the next 10 years, that may become a complete thing of the past, even though vinyl seems more popular than ever in its own way.
You forgot agonize over the track order. I mean, that's a whole other thing, right?
The sequence is a big deal, dude. Like, even like on the Heroes and Monsters CD, we had to, we kept trying to figure out where to put And You'll Remain. It's the last track on the album. And it just felt kind of important in a weird, like, pretentious way. It felt like this kind of feels like it gets kind of like wasted if it's here or here. So we put it at the end of the record, and it felt like, yeah, that feels like the closing credits of a film or something to me. It's such a powerful song that I kind of felt like it should be there. Yeah.
Okay, you're leading me right into, let's talk about some of these tracks briefly. You mentioned Locked and Loaded, heavy riff. It's a great opener. I fucking love it.
Oh, thank you.
Raw Power, dude. I'm sure that title's a nod to the Stooges. Maybe not. Just my guess.
Yeah, it was my definite gateway into the song for sure.
Like, that track is right in my wheelhouse, dude. When I heard that one, I'm like, okay, I'm up to my eyeballs.
It whoops ass, and it's very singable at the same time, you know, which is my kind of thing too.
Like I said before, the playing is killer, and your fucking vocals, dude. Like, did you sell your soul to Satan? Like, it's unbelievable for total rock power.
It's been interesting for me as as far into my career as I am, it's like, there's still like a giant chunk of people who only know me as the bass player for Slash. You know what I mean? So once in a while, when the opportunity comes up, like for something like this to sing, I go, hell yeah, let's, I'm going to take it up a notch, So this particular recording, I just kind of thought, well, I'll just go for it and see what happens.
Yeah. And this one has a proper video. So you see you guys performing, and man, Steph's solos. This guy shreds, man. Heard a little Satriani at the end. I mean, unbelievable. Like, yeah,
he's definitely got all those skills. Like you could tell he kind of like came up in that world. So whether he gets to really show that off, I don't know in any other context. But for this kind of stuff, it's kind of like yeah, you're right. I kind of forget, like, as I've been like kind of going through the record, because we're getting ready to do some shows. So I'm like, I go, oh wow, there's a lot of like, not a lot, but there's a few moments where it's kind of like the long outro and just solo out. And I'm like, yeah, man, go for it, because living through the 90s, and you were there as well, when the guitar solo became kind of verboten, even into the 2000s, I suppose, maybe even more so. Even with Toque, I remember discussing like putting together Never Enough for You, the song, and I go, and then we'll do the solo. And I remember Corey looking at me and kind of going, do we need a solo? I go, it's the 21st century, you can do whatever you want. There's no more sort of like, well, guitar solos are kind of passe, or I'm like, we're making our own music. We can do whatever we want. Play a guitar solo. You're an amazing guitar player. You should play a guitar solo. And then, now every Toque song is a guitar clinic. But
it backfired on you.
Yeah, I think that's but I enjoy that kind of stuff. I mean, again, as a guy who doesn't really care about guitar solos, I just think like, yeah, play a guitar solo. Like, let's do it. You have the skills to do that. You should do that. It's one thing to just kind of just play fast for no reason, but to actually come up with construct something that's really cool. And guys like Steph and guys like Corey, they can do that kind of stuff. So yeah, so Steph he definitely shines on stuff like raw power and whatnot.
Oh man. Hey, in terms of the video, this might seem like a bit of a geeky question, but like, how many times do you run through that track to get the coverage? Like,
a lot. I mean, I've done videos, as you know, since the 80s, really, like late 80s. So yeah, it's a fascinating thing of just kind of like, they play the track, and you get through that thing where you're kind of like, by the 100th time you've done it, it's almost kind of like, is this enough already? Like, no, you still have to look like you're kind of like, having the time of your life and putting on the show of shows, but it is kind of like exhausting, but it's fun. I mean, it's, at the same time, and we'd never stood in a sort of like stage, like, even though we're in the desert or whatever, and played together. So it was kind of like, okay, well, here we go. Now we're going to play.
Now, if I was standing there, obviously it's all mimed, but are you singing?
Yeah, I generally do. I think it's, I think it's important to kind of, when you're miming, that you kind of like look like you're singing, at least for me anyway. I've done it in the past on a couple of occasions where, because sometimes they'll do stuff where they play that, making videos where the music's played really fast, so when they play it back, it's kind of slowed down, or vice versa. That's when you're kind of like, well, how do I sing this? Because the music plays back like chipmunks, and then you got to kind of sing along. But yeah, generally I try to sing along.
Was that the first time you guys actually met in person on that video, or was it before that?
Well, Will and I have met many times, but
or played together, I should say.
Yeah, but played together, yeah. But Steph and I had never met in person, so that was interesting. Yeah, so it was like spending time, like you and I are spending time right now. Steph and I were doing that a lot, like kind of like going over stuff. But it's such a 21st century thing, isn't it? Where you kind of like, you see people a lot. Like sometimes I'll be at a club or whatever, and somebody go, "Hey, how are you?" And I go, hello, kind of like, it's like, why are you so excited? We talk like every day. And then you think to yourself, well, yeah, but I haven't seen you in 3 months. We just kind of text all the time, and you're kind of like, oh, hey man, so it's not like I'm being like a dick. I just kind of like, why are you so excited to see me? We talk like all the time.
Right.
But you realize, no, yeah, it's a 21st century thing that we speak, we're in constant contact. And that's what's so interesting about, like, then sort of like looking at Steph and going, oh, I guess this is like our first time at LAX, Los Angeles airport, like meeting and going like, oh, it's so interesting. I never really thought about that until we're here. And then we strap on guitars and drums and play, and like, this is it. Now we're in it.
Okay, the third single I want to talk about too is Let's Ride It. So this is a really cool, catchy track. It's got great hooks. Here's what I love. I can hear all the influences on this track and on the album, like Queen and Kiss and Cheap Trick and Sweet, even little prog stuff, like you said. but it still sounds like a band. It still sounds like you guys. And that's not easy to do, but I think you guys successfully pulled that off, man.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think for guys like you, because you and I speak a lot of the same language that way.
Yeah.
So when you say Sweet, Cheap Trick,
Yeah.
those Queen, these are all 100% there in the bag of tricks. So you don't have to dig deep. It's like right there, and then the deeper you dig, Let's Ride It is definitely in that world for sure. It has the sort of sing along chorus. It has a stacked harmony thing, that sweet kind of Queen thing. It just felt like a bit of a party song, and for lack of better words, and just kind of celebratory kind of tune, and people seem to be reacting to that, because I think that you're talking about like three guys who have a collective idea of what we like musically, and then each guy has his own sort of, it starts to get further and further like into individual ideas of what you like and what you don't like, but there's always that collective world, and I think that all those touchstones of the bands we were just talking about are all sort of there, and they're definitely very apparent in Let's Ride It.
And I'm assuming the director's probably a fan of the 70s show, because that's what it's, when you guys are in the car, it had that 70s show vibe to the max, right?
Yeah, totally. It's so funny. I was going to tell a friend of mine to try and compile like all the different times I've been driving in videos. The last Toque video I'm driving.
Yeah, right.
Sin City Sinners, going to Vegas I'm driving. Because it's never like, we're never in a position to have the budget where I'm being towed like a proper film or TV show where you can kind of like, where the guy spends way too much time talking to the guy.
Yeah, right.
He's not looking at the road. But I'm actually driving these friggin' cars. We were literally in Hollywood. We just said, well, let's just go to Hollywood and film some stuff, because we had the performance stuff somewhere down in the desert that we did. Both videos were filmed in the same location. One was indoors, one was out in the desert. Raw Power was outside. So we just went down into Hollywood. You could see us out by the whiskey, walk by towards the Viper Room. The Gil Turner's is a liquor store there that we walk into, and all kinds. It was just basically like, yeah, let's just make it like as if it's like three guys going out, and we just basically just drove whoever's car that was, but they put the GoPros on and okay, go,
right,
and it has the total 70s show kind of vibe
totally
to it.
does.
Yeah.
Let's talk about how awesome Sweet is, and how awesome your cover of Set Me Free of Desolation Boulevard is. This is killer. And here's what I love about it. Yes, the playing is off the charts, blah, blah, blah. It's not a note for note cover. You guys fuck with it a bit, and that's what I like. It's just awesome.
We talked about a cover song, and I think like, when you're talking about the 10 songs and the idea of like, You Really Got Me, or something like that from the first Van Halen, there's always that sort of like, it's a new thing. You're familiar with these guys, but it is always nice to have that one song that people go like, oh, okay. Like the kind of like something they're sort of familiar with. And Set Me Free kept coming back as sort of an idea. We were tossing around a few ideas, of which I can't remember really any of them, because none of them were that interesting. But then Desolation Boulevard is like, you could have picked basically any song on that album.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
you would have a winner, what I mean? But Set Me Free was just kind of like, first of all, Will Hunt shines on that kind of song because he's just a monster. It's like, yeah.
I was getting to that.
Yeah,
He's a beast on this track, man.
I know. It's just kind of like, let him just do his thing. And we're just like, it's worth the price of admission. The Sweet is, in a weird way, is still underrated in my opinion. They're one of those bands that everybody knows. Oh yeah, Fox on the Run or whatever, and Ballroom Blitz, and every single song is a masterpiece. The vocals, I mean, like Brian's voice, and then the harmonies, and then a song like Set Me Free had all those sort of musical breaks. It's almost kind of thrashy in its way, in a very early pop influenced thrash song. And then there's these breakdowns. I even have like a bass line that does some stuff. And I'm like, I thought it was like on the recording, it's just like a kind of like 16th kind of thing. I just thought it was a guitar, so I didn't play anything there. They go, hey, you missed the bass part thing. And I go, what bass part thing? Put something here. And I go, okay. So I just did a thing. And I was like, it's really cool. Like, and so Steph goes off, Will's goes off. We're kind of going crazy, but somehow there's a song happening at the same time. Yeah.
I definitely, with that bass part, I did smile. I thought that's your little Geddy Lee moment. Maybe you had your Geddy Lee pedal out. I don't know. But it was really cool.
It literally was. I was using the 2112 Geddy Lee pedal. So there you go.
Perfect.
That's sort of the secret sauce now. I was the first to get that thing now. Zach Throne, Brent Fitz, everybody has the 2112
right.
Geddy Lee Sands amp. Yeah, it's that's so awesome. Great.
I got thinking of other Sweet covers. I know Vince Neil did this song on Exposed,
yeah, he did.
I believe.
He did, yeah.
And Steve Stevens, Atomic Playboys, they did Action. That was fucking
That's
cool.
right. Black and Blue did Action as well. You know what's another one? No You Don't by, I think Pat Benatar, might have done that. Almost every song, on Desolation Boulevard, somebody,
right.
maybe not the 16s or something like that, but Solid Gold Brass or something. But there's quite a few of those. I mean, Fox on the Run's been done 100 times.
They're heavier than people realize too, I think. Like Sweet F.A., which you sang on David Ellefson's covers album, that kicks ass, Yeah,
it's so good. It's funny you bring that up because I thought of that the other day. I go, that was a good one too. So yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. This album isn't just, as much as I love the Full Tilt rock thing, that's my wheelhouse. Angels Never Sleep, heavy, moodier track I really like. Blame is cool. It's got some odd time signature shit going on. It's a bit proggy. Don't Tell Me I'm Wrong, kind of the power ballad vibe. But it's that one you've already mentioned. That last track, dude, I was like, I just sat back in my fucking chair. Like, this is a killer song. Leaving it for the end was perfect. Like, it's really, really strong. Different instrumentation on it. I love it, man. I really do.
That was one of those ones that I mentioned before, it was really hard to figure out where to put it because it felt like it wouldn't get its sort of moment if it wasn't sort of by itself in a way, like, so that it kind of closes the album. And that's not my lyric in that song. It's a friend of ours who manages Evanescence and a bunch of other things, wrote it about a loss in a family loss and that kind of stuff. So it's a really, really heavy thing. And it's another one of those things I heard it. I was like, wow, this is a really special thing. We have to do a version of this, And it was a giant conversation about like, well, how do we do this? Is it sort of like it's an acoustic thing? How do the drums and bass work in this? And Will does that great fade up of this kind of Bonham-y type thing that comes in, and it just really feels important. I hate using that word too much, but it's sort of like, it just felt like, this is something that I think people are going to get a lot out of,
A song that builds like that. It just builds and builds. Yeah. It's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the epicness, I think, like in a couple of songs that you mentioned is important to, November Rain, I suppose, would be like the kind of, the touchstone for a song that kind of starts somewhere and goes somewhere else, or whatever. The Stairway to Heaven, I guess that this is, sure. It's a reinvention of a wheel that's been sort of built a million times. But like all those songs you mentioned, like Blame is totally like not my wheelhouse at all. But when they started doing it, I was like, this is so interesting and so cool. I was like, I want to kind of get involved in this because it's just like, I want to be able to kind of like say I was involved in this because it's not something I would come up with on my own. My bass is tuned to a drop B, you know, like almost everything about the band is new for me in a way that's sort of like, I would not play a time signature like that because it's, right. And I'll be honest with you, that's the one I'm struggling with now, trying to figure out how to play and sing this. Even with Slash, you know, it's like I record my vocals, you know, independent of thinking how I'm going to play the bass live. And then I have to sit down and go, how the hell am I going to do this? And I was like, and I was sort of like kind of playing bass and sitting in this very room trying to figure out how to go, okay, and then I got to sing that, and you know, so you really kind of have to get in the dojo and really work it out, you know what I mean? And that's what I've been doing like this last little while. I've been sitting here going, okay, so Blame and different songs like that, like how is this going to work, you know?
Right.
But again, part of the challenge that I kind of get off on.
Well, that's what makes this album such an interesting listen. There's a lot of different flavors on it. It's not just boom, 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 right? It's really well done. You should, I'm sure you are proud of it, but you really should be. It's really
Thank
good,
you.
Todd.
I think that was intentional too. The idea to do something that's not just, you know, 10 versions of the same song. I keep saying, which I grew up on punk rock and thrash and stuff like that, and often those are 10 songs of the same kind of idea. And there's power in that, you know what I mean? Like that's sort of like, there's some really cool shit about that kind of stuff. But I think in this record, it was sort of more like, I don't know, maybe like Led Zeppelin in the sense of like, say Zeppelin 3 goes from acoustic songs to heavy songs and all points in between, you know? And I think we tried to do a bit of that, even though when we think of Led Zeppelin, we go Led Zeppelin, you know? But then you kind of go, well, yeah, but Whole Lot of Love is markedly different than, you know, Tangerine or
Tangerine,
yeah. It's like, but it's all the same thing, which I think is, right. You know, is interesting. Yeah.
So you mentioned you guys are taking this band on the road, which is super cool. The Italian Invasion Tour, February 9th to 19th, you're doing 10 shows. So I was going to ask you why Italy, but I think I can put it together because the Steph thing is out.
Yes, Steph kind of just, you know, I mean, it started off with like, what about this and what about that? And then it turns into 10 what if this or that's, you know what I mean? And I haven't been overseas since 2019, so I'm really excited to kind of get to go and check it out. It's such an interesting thing because when I first came to Europe I came with Brent Muscat. He did a version of Faster Pussycat that went over there. And I wish I got to somehow get a hold of the dates because I remember being in Italy like a lot, but it wasn't like Rome and Venice and Milan. It was like all these other towns, you know, it was kind of like Lethbridge of Italy, you know, and places like that. And there was amazing, like we had an amazing time. And so we're doing a bit of that this trip. So I did a run with Michael Monroe in Finland, which was a similar thing too, where I'm like, I've never heard of this place. Where's Turku, you know?
Right.
And all these like interesting little places and you think, well, yeah, of course, because these countries have not just Helsinki or Milan or Rome. They have all these other places, and Italy has a massive population. But to me, it's going to be like a tour of amazing food and wine that will also include music, I guess.
Well, and I couldn't help but think like a lot of these side projects, let's call them, they never tour. There's never a live element to it. And I think it's awesome you guys are doing that.
Well, it's not easy. I mean, obviously everybody's very busy with other things. Will's kind of like, you know, just about to start a whole lot of Evanescence activity. And it just sort of turns out to be like, hey, there's this window of opportunity. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? And you just kind of try and make it work. It's the same as everything. Because people keep saying, like, how do you do all these things? And I go, well, look, Slash has sort of been my first commitment. When we do Slash, it's really all we can do. You know what I mean? Like making a record or touring with him, it's so all-encompassing that you really can't. Well, I'm going to go off and do an acoustic show. It's like, no, you're not. You're not going to do that. But as soon as that's sort of off the table, it becomes like, you know, there's 365 days in the year. Toque, you know, we do a lot, and it gets busier and busier all the time. But even so, it's like there's Shania Twain. There's other things that we sort of have to work in to factor in there, and then stuff like the Bruce Kulick Band has its moments, the Kiss Cruise and whatnot that we do, and Heroes and Monsters. When I'm in town, I was at Raging Rock Vault last night playing here in Vegas, and it's sort of like it all has its place. It seems like on paper Todd's doing 100 things, but it's kind of like, yeah, but they all have like their moments. I mean, the reality is, if any one of those things became kind of like all encompassing, then I would have to kind of commit to it, or
Right.
Everything else would just kind of fall by the wayside based on that. But in the meantime, it's kind of like I just like playing music and I like making music.
Absolutely.
Tracy Guns and I just wrote a record together. I mean, that's a whole other thing that we're not quite sure what's happening with that or how that's going to go down, but it's so damn good. We're so excited about it because it's just a couple guys sitting around during the pandemic, or the tail end of the pandemic going like, you want to write a song? Yeah, sure. The next thing you know, you've got 10 songs or whatever it is. Because the weirdest thing to me is when people, like when we made the Static and Stereo record back in 2001, it was such a bizarre time because, the record companies were all falling apart. The downloading had really beat up the industry. And it felt like, for all intents and purposes, like it was not successful. You know what I mean? Like, even though the lead off single made it to like number 11 or something like that. And you feel like that's almost top 10. That feels pretty damn good to me. And then years go by and like someone walks up to you 10 years, 15 years later and holds that CD and wants you to sign it and tells you what this record means to them. And you're like, wow, that's awesome that you feel that way. And it's been that way. I've been fortunate enough to be, to have that with so many of these different things I've done. Sin City Sinners, people bring that record out all the time. And Ginger Wildheart, I mean, he's probably put out 10 records this year. I don't know. And it's only 2023. It's January. But he's one of those guys. And he just said to me, I was wearing a Frank Zappa t-shirt. He goes, well, that guy, how much music did he put out in his career? And I go, that's a good point. When you think about like Frank's gone, but we have a lot of material and I'm a fan and I'm still like, I don't know this record as well as that record, And I think that, maybe more is not necessarily better as long as it's, I think, you put your heart and soul into each thing you do. It's, it's going to find a place, it's going to find some ears that like it.
Absolutely, man. Well, Frank and Prince, I mean, that record button was fucking lit all the time. That vault is full, Todd. That vault is full.
Exactly. I know. And I'm dying to get in that vault.
Oh, dude. Well, I really hope, I got my fingers crossed that I can see this band live. Like, I hope you guys can maybe do some North American stuff or whatever, right? That would be so cool.
I'm hoping so too. I mean, I'm at that point where I just never say never with anything,
Right.
Whenever I hear a band is breaking up, I go, no, they're not. They'll, it's like, they'll find a way to kind of, like people keep saying stuff to me, like, the other day I posted something like, it's a picture of me and Miles Kennedy on stage together. I go, I don't know when we'll get a chance to do this again, but here's a picture. People are like, what does that mean? They're trying to read into it. Like, are they never touring together again? I'm like, look, even if we announced, yeah, we're not doing this anymore, which is not the case at all, I never believe it. Motley Crue signed a contract saying they would never tour together again. Yeah, it's like, and everybody's like, can you believe it? I go, yes, I can believe it.
I can absolutely believe it. Yeah,
because the offers are probably so huge that no one says no to that kind of money. It's like, yeah, we're getting back together. But yeah exactly. But at the same time, I'm not in Motley Crue, so it's like no one's coming at me with those kind of numbers. But
sure,
to me, I always kind of feel like the Sinners, like we get together and we do the original Sin just for laughs because we love each other and we love playing music. And it's just, to me, it seems like, yeah, let's just get together and play. Age of Electric did a whole other run, like 15 years, 17 years after we kind of went on hiatus. And it was like, it just felt like, yeah, it's time, and I think that all these things kind of feel like they could at any point fire back up. And with Heroes and Monsters is just the most recent version of like, hey, well, if we find a window that works, then we'll probably do some shows. Yeah.
Right on. We cracked the 1 hour mark, so I won't keep you much longer, but let's close things out with a little Duke talk, man.
All right.
Can't Stop It. I know it's not exactly new, but it's the latest single from you guys, and I absolutely love it too, man. I know it's going to be like, Randy's blowing smoke again, but I couldn't stop playing it. No pun intended.
Oh, that's great.
Tell me a bit about how this song came together, because it's really, really cool.
I remember Corey came at me with the idea of like, we should write a song that they could play at hockey games. And I was like, well, of course we should, So a lot of in the lyric when it goes like, when we're talking about stars aligning, nights are shining. I can't remember the lyrics off the top of my head, but there's a lot of like the nights, the stars. There's like a lot of like kind of Jets are firing, like lots of like sort of pseudo references with it, that are
Right.
words, but they're all hockey teams, you know what I mean? And we kind of felt like, even I don't know if it's ever going to get played in a hockey game. It just kind of felt like something that would get played at like, can't stop it, going to get out there and, we're going to crush it kind of thing. And because it's always funny when somebody sort of sets a mandate for a song. Because usually songs just kind of like become whatever they're going to become. But when someone says, what if we did a song that was kind of this, you go, well, then it has to be specifically, something else. You kind of have an idea after 1,000 years of going to hockey games and getting fired up.
I think I saw Fitz posted. I think they did play it at a Jets game or something.
I think they did play at a Jets game. Jets have been really good to us that way. They do bust out a few of our songs. I think they've done pretty well for that. So, I mean, well, Fitz can, he's the mayor of Winnipeg, so he gets
that's right.
He gets stuff done.
He's got some pull.
Yeah, he's got some pull. Exactly. Yeah.
And the video is fun too, man. It's a love-hate thing with me too, because that Camaro, like I had a 69 RSSS black and silver, and it was fucking mint. And long story short, I just got tired of the classic car thing. It's kind of a headache. And I'd been doing it for years and years.
I know, yeah.
So I saw that car and I'm like, oh, I got all nostalgic about my Camaro.
Heartbreak.
Yeah.
Dude, I had a Mercury Monterey, a 63 Mercury Monterey. And I'm with you. It's kind of like you're constantly under the hood. Yeah. You're constantly like tinkering with something.
Yeah.
Like 9 times out of 10 people are driving by and they kind of look at you and they go, cool. And every once in a while, and that 10th time there's somebody going, your headlights are out.
That's right.
You pull over, you got to kind of like, but I'm not technical minded at all. And I've never been a car guy, but I love the whole process of like, getting to know like, and how simple it is in old school cars. I open the Audi now and I go, oh, what the hell's going on in here?
Right.
But it's like, when you look at the old cars, it's like, this is that, that's this, I mean, to some degree, once it gets too far beyond my knowledge. But I really enjoyed that kind of thing. But yeah, it got crushed by a drunk driver in my absence. Oh, no. It was just parked out in front of my house. Some drunk driver just totaled it. It was brutal. But I'm with you. Yeah, it's kind of like, and I do that all the time. Every time I look at old cars, I'm like, yeah, dude, I'm going to do this. But I remember like, yeah, but that's why we only see those cars come out on Sundays. Because
that's right.
Yeah. Spent the week tinkering with it, and then he drives it around and drives it back home.
Yeah, I used to get mocked because I was really I'm not a huge car guy either, but I love muscle cars. There's just something about that.
Me too.
Whole thing. But I just love the way they look, and that's where it ends. Like I'm not tinkering either. Like I get somebody else to do that, right?
Yeah. If you're lucky enough to have a guy, but a lot of it was fairly straightforward, and I had a lot of I still have a lot of car friends, but I just kind of like, once you kind of lean out of that world, it's none of my business unless you're like the Billy Gibbons world where he gets like these kind of like classic cars modded right out, and he has a guy, so it's kind of like, you have to worry with it. Yeah.
Billy's got a guy. Not to go on and on about this car thing, but it was when I got rid of it, it was very freeing because now I don't care where I park. I don't care what the fucking weather is.
I know.
I just drive from here to here and that's it.
100%. Yeah. Because you got to worry about like, oh man.
I just washed it. Is that a cloud? That kind of shit.
And you park like as far from the entrance of where you are as possible. Because I don't want anybody parking near my car. Yeah.
Dude, I'd go to Home Depot and I would park at the back and the whole nine. I'd come out and there'd be people taking pictures of it and shit, right?
I love it. That's great.
It was a whole thing, yeah.
I love it.
Anyhow, back to Toque. Yeah, you got a couple of dates coming out. You got Edmonton Century Casino February 3rd, and I will see you February 4th in Calgary at the Deerfoot Inn and Casino. So that's exciting. I
know. It's so exciting. We're so ready to get back to it. I mean, we got a new track coming out too. Hopefully in the spring. So realistically, there'll be a new video and a new song coming out, which we've had for a while. They initially started from the mind of Shane Gallus. So it's great. It's really pretty different for us in a way, but still very much Toque. I think you're gonna dig it.
I'm sure I will. Now, in terms of Slash, is there any chance 2023 you guys are gonna come out to Western Canada? Are you going to do some more touring with the man, with the boss?
I don't think you'll see a lot of activity. I mean, any visible activity from us in 2023. I think that we definitely will probably reconvene in some form or another, but I don't think there's any plan for any shows because Alter Bridge is on a cycle, and Guns N' Roses and all that stuff is still going on. So we have a lot going on, but we're in constant contact, and it's just a matter of like figuring out how we're going to do this, and then kind of go from there. I'm not sure if it's going to be new music or if we'll actually kind of try and go out and do something in 24 with. It's so weird to be talking about 2024 in like January of 23, but we all know how quickly this crap goes. So it's kind of like, but
I
yeah,
just felt like that run for that run you did for 4 was short, man. Yeah.
It was a weird thing because everybody's commitments that had been made in 2020 and 2021 all had to kind of be obligated by the time the world reopened. You know what I mean? And it was sort of like, all these different Guns N' Roses commitments that they had made in 2020 that they had to make up, and 2021.
That little band, yeah.
Yeah, they had to make they had to make those up. So and then we're dealing with the sort of, it's like with the little hourglass every time you turn it over, and we know that eventually Miles Kennedy has to return to his world. To me, it didn't bum me out. I was kind of like, look, I'm glad we made a record. It's a cool record. We got to do a run, and we'll do it again. It's like I said before about bands, like, breaking up or whatever. It's even like people leaving bands. You kind of feel like, yeah, that guy left the band, but there'll be some reason why that guy's back. And I look at like Ron from Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers when he left and Howie came in and played bass for like 20 years or something like that. And then Howie passed away and Ron came back and played bass for the Heartbreakers.
Ron Blair comes back. He was selling bikinis or something.
Wasn't he? Yeah, I heard that. Yeah. He had a pretty good gig. And then it's like, but it's like the weirdest thing how like, like even with Age of Electric was the biggest example of a band that was so passive aggressively not broken up. We just kind of like just went off in different directions. I'm not talking to you anymore. And way earlier than people think, we were already kind of writing songs and getting together and hanging out. We just weren't like calling it the Age of Electric and getting in a van and driving places and playing. We were just kind of like, we were fine, but we just kind of, everybody had their own stuff going on. And when it finally kind of presented itself, we were like, yeah, let's get together and do some stuff. If that can happen, almost anything can happen. Well, even like Slash playing in Guns N' Roses. When I first started playing with Slash, that was like, it was never said, but it was like, that's never going to happen. That'll never happen, but they're together. And I think that that's true of so many different, I'm never playing with that person again. And sure enough, they're playing together, like Joe Perry left Aerosmith, that I'm sure that was I'm never doing this again. He's been back in Aerosmith longer than he was in Aerosmith the first time.
Yeah. Steven's not doing that great these days, I'm hearing. Hey, so I don't know what's going on.
Well, I hope he's okay. I don't know what to make of that. We're pretty tight to that scene. We know a lot of people in that scene, but I don't know enough. And I don't know if it's like my place to kind of go, so what's really going on? I think it's I'll know when everybody else knows kind of thing,
Right. Okay, man, I've kept you long enough. Thanks a lot for hanging, man. It was really fun, as always.
We've been meaning to do this for a long time, so I'm glad we finally got to touch base.
Absolutely.
On a Sunday morning.
Right? This has been my earliest beer, rum, and rock and roll. I'll say that. This is sparkling water, Todd.
I was going to say, it's just mostly rock and roll, no beer and rum.
That's right.
Sparkling water and rock and roll. Yeah.
That's right. Change the title for this one.
I join you in the bubbly there, too. So, yeah.
There you go. Okay, check out Heroes and Monsters' debut album out January 20th. Get this fucking thing. It kicks ass. It really does.
Thank you, brother. Thank you so much.
If you're in Vegas, Todd's at the Rio raiding the Rock Vault off and on. That's fun.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, that's a fun gig, hey, probably. You get good turnout for that on a
Yeah, it's good. I just did it last night. Blas is back. Blas is back from Trans-Siberian Orchestra. Blas. Yep. I always joke because it's like we do the kind of, at the end of the night, they do the lineup and everybody introduces each member. And then Blas Elias is Beyonce and the rest of us are Destiny's Child. He's like, everybody just goes crazy for Blas Elias. He looks exactly the same.
I was just going to say, he looks exactly the same. It's crazy.
And he's a monster and people love him, and I think that he's one of the greatest people I know. And it's a blast. We have a blast doing it. Jizzy Pearl was doing it last night from Love Hate, and Quiet Riot lasted a while. So we have a blast. I love all those guys. And the main reason I do it. I mean, as much as, it's kind of like they're really good to me, but I just love those guys. We have a blast. I love hanging out, talking about rock and roll and fun stuff, and then getting on stage and playing, and then coming home and sleeping in my own bed.
Absolutely, man. Yeah. And that's cool that guys are coming in and out. That makes it interesting too, right?
It does. Yeah. It keeps it kind of fresh. But I mean, generally there's an A-team kind of, lineup that they try to to try to use.
Right.
And thankfully, I'm a part of what they consider their A list. At least I think I am.
I'm going to let you go, man. So for all Todd's tour dates, follow him on all the socials. He's everywhere on social media.
Literally.
You can find us wherever podcasts are broadcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave some feedback in the comments. Let Todd and I know what you think about this album.
Yeah, that'd be great.
On behalf of Todd and I, thanks for checking us out. Till next time, keep rock alive, people. Peace.